Hey, what's up guys? Guardian here, coming to you guys with a deck profile on my Granblue deck. So, yeah, we have a Granblue deck profile on the channel. I didn't do the one last year for some reason. I just didn't feel like profiling Basskirk. I don't know why, just didn't feel like it. But yeah, I did enjoy playing the Basskirk version last year, and we didn't take Basskirk out. Basskirk's still on the deck. But yeah, we have a new Vanguard here with Cocytus, and Cocytus is really, really cool, and he definitely changed this deck a whole bunch. A lot as well with the new support as well that came out. The deck is definitely a lot more entertaining to play now. I actually started to grow a little bit sick of the deck. It was very sort of like linear and samey. But with the amount of options we have available now, because of the mass milling that Cocytus provides us, we have a lot more choice and a bit more decision making to make now when it comes to our mills and how when about we need to stop, and also what we have available in our drop zone. So yeah, without further ado, we'll get stuck into the profile and I'll show you guys what I am playing in my Granblue deck. So, to start with the grade 3s, we have 4 copies of the main guy himself, Ice Prison Necromancer Cocytus. So yeah, this guy is amazing. So for 1 Counterblast, you put the top 4 cards of your deck into the drop zone, and then you get a call card from your drop zone equal to the number of grade 3s in your soul plus 2. So this is actually pretty cool because, well, first of all, if you have 0 grade 3s in your soul, plus 2 will obviously give you 2 units from the drop zone. So that's a Counterblast 1, Mill 4 for a plus 2, which is pretty good. Counterblast 1 for a plus 2, pretty good. But of course, the Mill 4 does come with a downside. You can't keep doing this because your deck's just going to empty out and you're just going to mill yourself to death. So I think it's definitely important to keep track of your deck and make sure you don't die the deck out because, yeah, you're going too far at that point. But it is really good in terms of accelerating the drop zone. It really has changed the way that Granblue plays as a whole, just in terms of how many more options you have available now and how quick you can set the drop zone up. And it also sets up the drop zone for your skills that require you to have a certain amount of cards in the drop zone. So Cocytus says, if you have 10 or more cards in drop zone, he gets 10,000 power during your turn. But if you have 20 or more cards in your drop zone, instead of 10,000 power, he will get 20,000 power and plus 1 critical. So he becomes just a really good beat stick for pressure in the late game. At that point, when you've got 20 or more cards in drop zone, you are looking to end the game relatively soon. So I wouldn't really blame you if you don't have many turns with that crit skill online. Because you'll either be on him or you'll be on the Basskirk. Depending on where you are with your deck. Depending on how many cards are left over in your deck will depend on what Vanguard you're currently on. And it's also really easy to tutor whatever card you need in this deck, depending on what your Vanguard is, because of Greedshade, because Greedshade can just recycle loads of stuff in your drop zone. So yeah, definitely got to play 4 Cocytus in my opinion. He's just too good not to play. So playing 4 copies of him. Then we're playing 2 copies of Basskirk. We still kept Basskirk in the deck. He's relatively good for the late game because at a certain point you do need to stop milling your deck. But that then turns off your ability to resurrect from the drop zone with Cocytus, with the heavy plussing that he provides you. But that doesn't mean you can't stop rezzing with Basskirk, because you can ride into the Basskirk, get your Gift Protect, obviously, and then you're still pressuring with your critical that Basskirk can give. And you are also getting the ability to resurrect from the drop zone with his ability, so you can still go for the late game things like Dragon or Flanger, whatever you need. Now, I personally like running 2 of it just because I like having him available for those occasions. I've seen lists where you play 1, but I personally like sticking with 2. It's just my personal preference, but yeah, you can play less if you want to, because you can basically just recycle this from the drop zone with Greedshade, which is just really, really cool. That we're able to do that. So 2 copies of Basskirk for the late game. And then we're playing 2 copies of Dragon. Dragon's really good just for the massive numbers you can generate in the late game. But I do think 2 is about... I think 2 is about right, because in the early game, instead of Dragon, you actually want to bring Boat out from your deck, or Stormride Ghost Ship is his technical name, I suppose. But Yeah, Boar in the early game is actually a lot better because Dragon, yeah, you'll bring him back, but then he dies at the end of the battle. But with Boar, he'll then draw you a card. So you're actually keeping the advantage that you generated there from the resurrection of Boar. So that's actually really cool. So you won't need Dragon that badly until the very late stages of the game. So that's why I think 2 of him is definitely the correct amount. So we've got 2 copies of Dragon. And then we have, for the last grade 3, we are playing 10 grade 3s in the deck. I put 2 Flanger in. I definitely agree that 2 Flanger is a lot better, just because you really want him for those late stages of the game where you are literally going for the win, and you want to have access to this guy like at all times. So I think 2 is definitely the better way to go with this, and I also like having the 10 grade 3s in this deck because it then gives you a higher percentage chance for your Romario on your grade 1 turn. When you ride over him to grade 2, it gives you a higher chance to have a grade 3 available to put into your soul that you don't mind, getting rid of. Because preferably, you would like to keep Cocytus, but you don't mind getting rid of the other 6 grade 3s because you can just get them back whenever you need them. Cocytus is really the only important grade 3s that you need to ride into. So, yeah, I think Flanger is definitely a nice 2 of that you can put in there. Now, I've seen some lists play the Whale grade 3 with the Imaginary Gift as well. I understand why it's good, but I just don't like it personally. But I do understand why it is a good card. But yeah, I'm just not sold on it personally. So yeah, so those are the grade 3s regardless. So I quite like the grade 3 lineup. 10 I think is a really nice amount, especially with the Romario explanation of putting a grade 3 into the soul. Because that way you can get an additional grade 3 in the soul for when you go for Cocytus to then resurrect 3 cards instead of 2. So that's actually really cool. So moving into the grade 2s here, we have 4 copies of Greedshade. Yes, this guy is this guy's amazing. He actually just turned the Granblue into this massive catalog of units that you can just pick and choose whatever you need at whatever time you want. It really is amazing. So continuous Vanguard or Reguard during your turn. If your drop zone has 10 or more cards, you get 5,000 power, so 14k beat stick, which is really nice. But the main skill, of course, is that when he's placed on Reguard, you can discard a card from your hand, put 2 cards from the top of your deck into your drop zone, and then return a card not named Greedshade from your drop zone to your hand. So this is this is ridiculous. It really is such a strong card for the clan overall. Just those mills that you're doing with Cocytus is just. It goes by so quickly. You have so many options to choose from. It is actually ridiculous how many options you have available with the Greedshade to bring back to hand, which is why you can get away with 1 or 2 Basskirk or whatever you want to play. It really is just, it's amazing, But do remember that it is milling you. So do remember that it is actually milling you as well when you're doing that skill. You're not just discarding a card to add a card back. You are milling 2 cards as well. So do keep track of that. But yeah, I can't even, yeah, this card's just amazing. Yeah, just an amazing card for the clan. Can't express it enough. So we have 4 copies of Greedshade, and then we're playing 4 copies of actually my favorite, I'd probably say my favorite artwork of the clan, Captain Nightmist. I actually really like this card, and it actually somewhat inspired me to actually pick Granblue up in the first place. So yeah, Captain Nightmist, when placed on Reguard, you can counterblast 1 to call a grade 1 or less card from your drop zone to the Reguard circle, and if your drop zone has 10 or more cards, you may call regardless of the grade. So you can call anything back that you want when you're at 10 or more. But yeah, this guy actually really synergizes really well with a new grade 1 that we got, which is Ripple Banshee, I believe. Yeah, Ripple Banshee. So, of course, with this being a grade 1, if you can get this set up in the drop zone in the early game, you could actually just call your Captain Nightmist, counterblast, bring this back, and then Ripple Banshee says, for a Soul Blast, when it's called back from the drop zone to your Reguard circle, you can Soul Blast 1 to draw a card, and then this unit gets 4,000 power. So you are setting up a 21k column here, and you're also getting a +1 as well. Well, technically a +2, because you called this back for a counterblast, and then you're Soul Blasting to draw a card, so yeah, a lot of really nice early game advantage that you can generate if you want to. If you don't have it set up, it's not the end of the world, but it is a nice interaction that you can do in the early game with Captain Nightmist. But generally speaking, we are playing this because of the same reason of Basskirk, because, like I say, you want to stop milling at a certain point, and when you do ride into your Basskirk, that gives you 1 form of resurrection, but Captain Nightmist also provides you another form of resurrection that you don't have to rely on with the Cocytus. So that's really nice there. So 4 copies of him. And then the last grade 2, of course, is going to be Big Boat Boy. Yeah, we have 3 copies of Stormride Ghost Ship. So this guy, I love this card. It really, really just, it made me love Granblue a lot more, put it that way. So this guy's basically your early game dragon. So you're going to call this guy in the early game because from hand, you cannot normal call this unit, so it's similar to Dragon that way, but you can ride him. Do remember that? You can ride him. But yeah, you can't normal call him to, the field or the Guardian Circle for that matter. But when you do resurrect him, because that's pretty much the way you're going to call him, is that when you resurrect him, when this unit attacks, he gets 15,000 power, and at the end of the battle, he retires himself to the drop zone, but then also you get a draw card. So really, really solid. You're basically keeping the advantage that you generated from the resurrection. And yeah, I think 3 is fine. You don't want to play 4 because, you know what I mean? It's like, you're going to be calling this in the early game, getting your draws. And I think 3 is enough for that. And then in the late game, you then want to go for dragons. So that's the way I kind of see about it. So I hope that makes sense. But yeah, 3 of him is a nice amount. And then we have the grade 1s. So we're going to be starting with the original grade 1 that came out last year, Dandy Romario. The crazy thing with this card is that it just got a lot better because of the way that Cocytus works with this. The fact that you can put a grade 3 into your soul with this card skill to then provide an additional call that you can bring out with Cocytus is ridiculous in my opinion. So this card became more powerful because of the release of Cocytus, which I think is crazy, because this guy was already good. So yeah, we'll just put him over here. But just to explain, so continuous, while your drop zone has 10 or more cards, he has plus 4,000 power. So 12k booster at all times, I think that's pretty solid in my opinion. Stick that behind your Vanguard and you pretty much got a 24k column at all times, so you don't really care about force that much, which is actually pretty cool. But when rolled upon, you counterblast 1 and put a card from your hand into your soul. You then put the top 3 cards of your deck into your drop zone, and then you return 1 card from the drop zone to your hand. So again, it gives you that chance of milling, setting the drop zone up and then bringing something back that's more important to you. Maybe you don't have the grade 3 yet, that's more optimal, like Cocytus, but then maybe that mill gives you the Cocytus, and then you can just return it back to your hand, which is really, really solid. But yeah, 12k booster, that sort of effect on Stormride is just really, really solid. So got to play 4 of him. And then we're playing the 4 Ripple Banshee. Like I said, it's got really nice interaction with Captain Nightmist, bringing it back from drop zone, soul blast, and get a draw. Just really, really solid advantage generation that you can do with this card. But yeah, I like to play 4 of them just so you have more chance to seeing this in the early game. You could maybe get away with 3. I can understand that, but I personally like 4 because you'll see it more quickly, and then you can start using it more often in the stages that you actually want to use it. So yeah, that's pretty nice. But just keep track of your soul, because of course you will need some soul for your Basskirk at the late stages of the game. And also don't be silly and soul blast your grade 3s, because you'll need those of course for your Cocytus play and also your Flanger as well. Remember that Flanger does need a Soul Blaster grade 3 for his skill. So yeah, all the other stuff though, Soul Blast them away and generate some pluses. Really, really nice. So next we have only 3 copies of the grade 1 PG. I know that a lot of lists are playing 4 of these, and I understand why, but I will explain why I'm only playing 3. So of course, we want to play 3 of these just because we are playing a more heavier crit build. We're playing 11 crit in this deck, which you can probably tell what the rest of the triggers are now. But yeah, we're playing 11 crit because we can just be so aggressive in this deck that we don't really care about the grade 1 PG being a thing. But also this grade 1 PG is just really good for Granblue, because when you ride it, when it's placed on Vanguard, I should say, you get a draw card and then discard a card from your hand. So that's obviously really good. It gives you more filtering power, but then you're setting up the drop zone as well. So yeah, this is actually a really good perfect card for Granblue. So you definitely want to be playing this in the deck. And then the final grade 1 is going to be 1 copy of Alfio. I like the 1 of this. Now, I know that in my mail video, I said I can't really see this card being played, but I completely forgot about the interaction that it'll have with Greedshade, because at the times where you actually want this card, you can just bring it back to your hand with Greedshade. So if you just mill this or just guard with it or whatever, get it into your drop zone at any point, you can just bring it back whenever you need it. So if you're lacking on counterblast, like let's say your opponent's damage denying you, you can just add this card back to your hand with Greedshade and then get your counter charge and you're sorted. So yeah, I think the 1 copy of it is nice in the deck, but I wouldn't particularly run more than that. But I do like it as a one-of. So yeah. So with that, we have the grade zeros. We of course have our starter, Captain Nightkid. Really nice to have a fresh starter in the deck. Really, really nice. And then we are playing, like I said, we're playing the 12 crit. Let's see where I can put these. We'll put them over here. So we have 4 copies of Rusty's Banshee, of course. Really, really nice art. I love this card's artwork with the ghosties on it. So 4 copies of that. The new crit, and then we're playing 4 copies of Night Spirit. I'd say this is like my second favorite critical. I like the artwork. I just like the way he looks. It looks really, really cool. And then we're playing 3 copies of Mortal Mimic. So, like I said, this is an 11 crit build, and the reason that we're playing 11 crit is because I decided to play 1 draw PG. Now, there is a reason for this, and I know that a lot of people are probably saying, you know, oh, you're playing a draw trigger, like, what you doing? I'm not playing this card because it's a draw trigger. I'm playing it because it's a grade 0 Sentinel, and I think that's really cool because there's a card that Dimension Police have called Glory Maker, which I believe it says your opponent can only call grade 0s from the hand or something like that. It basically makes it so that you can't use the grade 1 PG against it. And considering how heavy hitting the Dimension Police deck is now, I don't want to be caught out off guard and just be outright killed. So having the utility of a grade 0 trigger that's the perfect guard, I quite like it. You know, if I do need it, I can go fetch it with the Greed Shade, and I think one of it isn't detrimental. You know, I think having that one draw one draw in the deck, it ain't gonna kill me. You know, I'm not that I'm not that dumb to the point where it's like, hey, I've got like 2 cards on my deck, and the top card's gonna be a draw. You know, like the chances of that happening, and yeah, it could happen, but I don't think one draw is going to be the end of the world for this deck. But having the utility of having that grade 0 Sentinel, I think is really nice. And I personally like it. So by all means, if you don't like it, you can just take this out for the additional critical. But yeah, you then have to figure out space for the 4th Sentinel, which you could probably take out a Ripple Banshee maybe for that. But I don't know. It's up to you on that. But I personally like playing the 1-draw PG in here. And also, it's Gust Djinn. I quite like Gust Djinn's art, and I just like the card in general. So I just wanted to keep one of him in the deck at least, which I think that's I think that explains him rather well. But then, of course, we have the 4 cheeky Rick the Ghostie. I love this heal. It's it came through for me too many times now that I can count, and I just love it. It's definitely one of my favorite heal triggers, and it just looks stupid, but I love it for that reason. So yeah, that is my Granblue deck and the update for it with Cocytus, which I suppose it technically isn't an update because I haven't profiled the deck before. But I hope I explained my choices well enough. I really like the build myself. This is my personalized build, so I know it might not be the most optimal build, you know, quotation marks, but I like it. I think it's got a bit of flavor to it. I like the idea of the 1-draw PG in here, with it being a grade 0 Sentinel. And yeah, the overall feel of the deck, it's so much more fun. So much more fun than what it was before. You've got so many more options to choose from, and the general feel of the deck, it just feels so live, which is weird because it's Granblue and they're undead and stuff, but you know what I mean. But either way, guys, that is going to be it for the deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Look forward to some more videos on the channel. I've got some ideas that I am willing to do, probably maybe next week. We'll see what happens. There's a few things happening over the next couple of weeks, so we'll just go with the flow, as we always do on the channel. But yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. So like always, guys, take care, and have a nice day. Guardian, signing out.